Hello, fellow Canadian, or foreign political junkie. Yeah, I see you. This video is gonna be a little different for the channel. Again, I've done this twice now in a row. Look, the election is this year, and it's rapidly approaching. And despite the fact that I wanted this to happen in October, the powers that be had something different in mind. So, here we are. I swear I'm going to get back to video games and technology on this channel shortly, but, you know, the second big important video of the year, so we're gonna get through this together, and you're being very brave. Inspired by old Blog Brothers videos from, like, 2008 and 2012, God, I wish we could go back to that now, where they would encourage their viewers to vote. And I kind of want to do the same, but this year, and in Canada. And, you know, I'm just throwing this out into the void because, you know, I'm a nobody, but, you know, it's kind of important, especially this year. And everything I'm going to talk about, or at least the most relevant stuff, is going to be linked in the description and the pinned comment below. So, let's start with the very basic question of, how do we register to vote in the first place? To register to vote, first step is to be a Canadian citizen of the age of 18. From there, you can head over to the electionscanada.ca site to register online. If you can't register to vote online, for whatever reason, you can also register to vote through your tax return, snail mail, or by going to the local Elections Canada office. Though that's only during election time, which hopefully should still be election time by the time this video comes out. Kind of rushing to make this. You can also register to vote at the polling station, but by registering to vote in advance, you will receive a voter card telling you where the polling station is and various information about the riding. It's also very important to note that you can also find this information through the Elections Canada website. Note that if you move addresses, you'll need to update your current address to be able to register to vote properly. Now, if you didn't get that voter card for whatever reason, you can still vote. You'll just need 2 pieces of ID, and you will need to call in to Elections Canada directly to confirm where you actually need to go for your vote.
Hi, Neems from the future here. I did want to just show that you can go to the Elections Canada site and it will show you the various options for showing government ID, such as your driver's license that has like your name and picture and address on it. But if for whatever reason you need to show 2 pieces of ID, there is like a whole list here that I just didn't mention when I originally recorded the video. So, you know, this includes like your library card, your health card, bank statements, employee cards. Somewhere here is a utility bill. Like this is all valid forms of ID that you can use just to be like, hey, I swear this is who I say I am. Here's how to validate that. There is a third option that I just completely forgot about, which is option 3. If you don't have ID, you can still vote, but you will need to write down your address and identity in writing, and then someone vouch for you. They have to prove their identity and address, and you can only vouch for one person. But I think that this is still a very important option to note. By the way, if you want to know why option 3 is significant, look up the Fair Elections Act. You know, just do something to look at in your spare time. You know, just for fun.
You can either vote on the day of, or usually through advanced pollings about 10 to 7 days before. Now make sure you bring some ID with you. Typically, bring your driver's license, bring a utility bill, student ID, a bank statement. All of this can help just confirm that you are who you say you are at the polling station. So you can also vote by mail. This is something that many people did in the 2021 election, including myself and my family, for, pretty obvious, and I would like to think, uncontroversial reasons. For those within Canada, after an election is called, and I'm literally just going to read what's on the Elections Canada site, which you can go to in the description or the pinned comment. Just frankly, it was easier than writing this in my own words. Yeah, I'm pretty shameless. After an election is called, complete an application for registration and a special ballot. The form will be available at a local Elections Canada office, on the website, or by calling Elections Canada. Send Elections Canada the completed form and proof of identity and home address. You can submit them by fax, by mail, or in person at any local Elections Canada office. Once your application is accepted, Elections Canada will send you a special ballot voting kit by regular mail. The kit will explain how to mark your ballot and mail it in. In my personal experience, these ballots are just pure write-in ballots, so it's probably a good idea to look up the candidate's name so you don't mess up the spelling. You can also vote outside of the country through mailing in, though this does require you to register online, provide your passport, citizenship card, and or your Canadian birth certificate. Your writing will be whatever last address you lived in while you were still in Canada. Now we finally get on to the fun part. Who are the players here, and who should you vote for? Well, I can't tell you directly because you see, part of my fiendish master plan in this video is for you to think for yourself. Now, look, I know that looks like a cop-out, and maybe it is a little bit, but look, if you came to this video already knowing who you're going to vote for, I'm likely not going to change your mind. For all I know, you could have a completely different value system than me, and, you wouldn't listen to what I have to say on that topic, even if I tried my best. And if you would agree with me, then that's probably just ego stroking and self-satisfaction. And before you say, oh, Neems, we wouldn't do that. Yes, you would. I've been on Twitter. I know exactly how many of you act. Can't necessarily say all, Plus, to be honest with you, I don't want to date this video. For all I know, the complete political landscape could just be completely changed in just, I don't know, 3 years. Stuff's going wild right now. Plus, personally, I think there are far better commentators on here, on TikTok, and on Blue Sky that can provide far more information on all of the parties and the political landscape than I ever could right now. That's what happens when your political focus has been mostly on electoral reform for the past 5 years. And yes, I have at least one proportional representation video that I've been working on, but that's a future topic. Regardless, if you are someone who's genuinely unsure of who to vote for, I'd rather give you the resources and different ways of looking at the Canadian system so you can make the best choice for you than me to just give you an answer. So I was looking through my script here, and it's on my phone, right here, you can see it. I realized that I made a tactical error when I was writing this script, and it's that I never mentioned any of the political parties. I mean, like, the point of this video is more like a general guide to voting and how to think about voting in a parliamentary system. But in hindsight, knowing at least the political parties' names that a viewer can look up might be kind of important. So we're just gonna go over the 5 main political parties real quick, just to get them out of the way, and then we'll get on to the meat and potatoes of this video. So to go over the political parties real quick, you have the Liberals, the Conservatives, the NDP, the Bloc Québécois, and the Greens. And those are the 5 main parties. Now, when looking at these 5 main parties, there's broadly 3 main things that you might want to look for. Let's start with the most obvious thing that you would look for when deciding on who to vote for in your riding. The first thing that people will look to when trying to make a decision on what party to vote for will be the, leader of the party. These are the people that you will likely see the most of throughout the campaign trail, and while I feel like sometimes we put a little too much focus on them, these are the big players that will be the head of government if their party happens to receive the most seats within Parliament, which is how a parliamentary system works. And this does matter because they have the power to appoint cabinet ministers from the Parliament. Between the debates and the press conferences and the other public events, you can kind of gather your own profile of these leaders and the party's platforms on their stances on various things. And maybe the party head may start saying things that start to resonate with you. And for a lot of voters, that may just be enough. However, if you're like me and you're, let's just say unimpressed with the leadership in varying degrees among all the different parties, and that's the most partisan thing you're gonna get out of me this video, then maybe there's a way we can look a little bit deeper, shall we? So while the leader is the figurehead of the party, political parties are still made up by people. Members of the parties initially vote on what parties to adopt that they wish to push through Parliament, and who gets to be running for candidacy and the leadership of the party. Sure, the party leader is a kind of figurehead and representation of those policy decisions, and they can wiggle a certain kind of influence in the party's direction. They can still resign and be replaced by somebody else at practically any time, kind of like what we saw with Justin Trudeau's resignation. Now, of course, who will be PM on election day if that party wins the most seats probably should play a factor in your decision-making process and who you're going to vote for. It is a very important position after all, with regards to cabinet appointments, general direction of the government and country, and even on foreign relations. But I think for this reason, the party leader may not be the end-all, be-all that we often associate with it, due to the fact that we could switch party leaders at any time they wanted to. In theory, as we saw with Justin Trudeau, the party constitutions may not allow for a leader to be removed before an election without them stepping down. This is both in the Liberal and Conservative Party constitutions, by the way. I also encourage anyone to look up the Reform Act, as they have positions on reviewing and removing party leadership via the MPs, like we saw with Aaron O'Toole. Though there's a really annoying caveat to that, where the parties have to kind of give the MPs that power every time they form a new government. I get the compromise, but this is why the Conservatives could do it, but I don't think the NDP could do that this time around. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, please correct me. However, I also think that considering how the Conservatives have been running, those party constitutions may make that point irrelevant if they win, to my understanding, but it's something to think about. Regardless, it might be worth looking at the party as a whole. They're really good at promoting themselves on their blog for government support and criticism. You can also look at their platforms and dig through their policies if available. Now remember, primary and secondary sources and fact checkers and watchdog groups on the issues that you care about are your friends for more in-depth information on the various parties. It's always good to double check. Now there's one final thing that you need to look at when making your decision to vote, and that's the local candidate. So the fun thing about being in Canada, especially if you're left-leaning, is that your candidate for your riding could be a tiebreaker for a number of reasons. You see, in a parliamentary system, you don't vote for the Prime Minister directly, but you do vote for your local representative directly. Each seat in Parliament is split up between 343 seats, distributed amongst ridings as of 2025. The seat distribution is roughly based on population. There's a whole formula for that is actually freely available to look at. I recommend you looking at that because it sometimes makes sense. Because of our first past the post system, voters only vote for one candidate to represent them in the House in that local riding. Whoever wins the most votes wins the seat. Whichever party wins the most seats in the House more or less will form government, usually either being a minority or majority government, depending on how many seats they win. Now technically there could be a coalition or an alliance of parties that could win the most seats, and we could govern that way, but oh, that's not happening anytime soon. Candidates are selected by the local EDA, Electoral District Association, which are made up of members of the ridings who will democratically nominate the candidate to run in the next election. When an election is called, most MPs and would-be candidates will have their own sites to promote their campaign. For sitting MPs, you can actually look at what bills and motions they threw support in on and what they brought to the debates through transcripts on the Parliament site. There's also Open Parliament, which can be a little bit easier to navigate, but I just want to throw that out there. Most of these will line up with party line, but, every now and again you get a pleasant surprise. As for those running against the current MP of that seat, you'll have to be the judge of them purely based on their experience, background, and what they plan to bring to the table if elected. These are people after all, and they have their reasons for representing the riding and wanting to get into office. They might generally agree with their party's policies, but might have a valuable perspective in, say, the healthcare system if they're immunocompromised or chronically ill. A mother or father might have opinions about the cost of housing and childcare, for example. I might get a lot of flack for what I'm about to say, but people of marginalized identities, regardless of party affiliations, may bring important perspectives to the issues such as race, LGBTQ+, or First Nations issues. I'm not saying you have to put this much thought into it, but I'm just saying that when you're debating laws that might come into effect, it may be important to have certain perspectives in the House purely beyond party affiliation. When there are 3 parties, maybe 4, that are roughly viewed as similar enough, motive and background does tie a human connection to the voter. And one last thing that I should mention is that if you want to support a party locally, you're going to want to donate to the EDA directly. That supports campaigning for the candidate locally running and is more advantageous for your riding than donating to the party as a whole, and you still get that neat 75% tax credit, just like if you were donating to the party as a whole. Well, now that's all well and good. You've done your research, you have your opinions on the parties, leaders, and the candidates running in your riding. You're ready to vote. But now, how do you make your vote really count? After all, this is the first past the post system, and you can only vote for a single candidate in your riding. No ranking, no multi-choice, just one vote. One shot, one opportunity, mom's spaghetti. There are two main ways of coming to your final decision. Honestly, basically voting on pure values and policy. You're voting with your heart, regardless of what the polls say. Whether it is because of the local candidate, the leader, or the party, your vote is because you truly feel it is the best option for Canada, and the other options are not in your eyes. After all, you did the research. Why should you vote for someone who does not have your best interest in your heart? After all, you did the research, and why should you vote for someone who might not have your best interest at heart? This also does, in theory, signal to the winning parties what policies are on voters' minds, on incorporating them to win your vote later down the line. So it can, in theory, be worth it even if your preferred candidate loses. Or alternatively, you go pure strategic voting, baby. On the other hand, if you end up voting for someone who has no chance of winning in your riding, well, that can feel as if you wasted your vote. Annoyingly, if you go on social media, many people will say that you did and will berate you for it, and this gets on my nerves a lot, actually. Perhaps since the most votes is what candidate is elected, maybe you can compromise a little, in the hopes that it doesn't help the one that you dread would get in if you voted honestly. That way, while things could be better, it also saves you from the most disastrous result that splitting the vote could incur. You know, a deal with the lesser devil instead of the greater devil, even though I feel like that's a false dichotomy. After all, a deal with the lesser devil can't be all that bad, compared to the greater devil. Vote splitting is viewed as such a problem that sites like smartvoting.ca are created in aiding this method of voter thought. Now, I could talk for hours about the merits and flaws of both of these methods, but that would lean into a bigger video about why first past the post is a terrible system for a representative democracy, especially for the lower chamber, the House of Commons, which is supposed to be more representative of the populace at large. But unfortunately, this isn't a proportional representation video, and I already had one soapbox moment this video, so I guess I'll spare you my rant this time. Let's hope that didn't wake anyone up. But under the current system, it's ultimately up to you which method is right for you. The whole point of this video was more to encourage you on to explore what options are available to you when trying to make this very important decision for the country. And look, I've done both of these methods. There have been years where I have voted just honestly and how I truly felt, and other times have been strategic. I don't think that there's a wrong way to do this, but ultimately it comes down to what's your value system and where do you live. That's the main thing here. Hopefully this has been a somewhat insightful video despite me rambling and messing up my lines, and has given you a good starting point. I don't want this to be the end. Please do your own research. You now have an idea of how to approach elections from very broad strokes to all the way down to your local individual riding when it comes time for that big decision. Also quickly wanted to highlight some of the complexities, like, you liking the leader or the party as a whole, but your local candidate is just the worst. Also to evaluate the cost-benefit analysis of similar parties and candidates. Now, with all that being said, I think there are two very important things to keep in mind. Can we please show up and vote? Like, as we saw with the Ontario Snap election, it's just a few votes that could change the result of a riding. I think it will be in our best interest to go out and vote, regardless of who. But I think it's also important to remind ourselves that voting is but one expression of our democracy. It's an important one, it's also the baseline, but it's only one part of it. Just because your preferred person won or didn't win doesn't mean we should just be content with the results. Promises can be broken, and sometimes bills and decisions, and generally just bad policy, will be made that you will not agree with regardless of who's in charge. Just look at the states. That is why it is important to remind everyone that writing to your MPs and petitioning and protesting and going to town halls and other forms of activism that I'm just not aware of is just as important, if not probably more important, as choosing to vote. Don't let those people who say, well, this is what we voted for, tell you different. I think Unlearn16 said it best on TikTok. It's not democratic to just vote for officials every 4 years and then be hands off. We need a continuous conversation from the people to the government back and forth. I think we often forget how much we take for granted was gained by complaining and fighting and using our voices. And this is coming from a millennial who admittedly really needs to take that to heart and not just say it. But I think it needs to be said. Okay. This was a heavy video. Next video, I swear, I'll be back to just my usual goofiness and we'll talk about video games and tech or something. And maybe I'll make a proportional representation video at some point. Okay, bye! Guys, I'm sorry that this even took so long. Like, man... There was one point that I threw out my back by coughing too hard. And then that delayed this video. And then Mark Carney called an election. And then I just had to go, ah. And then in short, this video took longer than it needed to come out. Hopefully I can make a silly video again. God, I need a silly video again. May or may not involve videotapes, by the way. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go to bed now.